Now, word of a short-term deal on the debt ceiling is resonating with investors on Wall Street. The market staged a rally after Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced he's open to compromise. But is the damage already done? According to the New York Times, finance executives say risk of default is already damaging the economy. And here to talk about all of this is Kristen Myers, editor-in-chief of The Balance. Kristen, good morning to you. Are those experts right? Are we already seeing signs that the mere mention of default already hurts the economy?
You know, I think that how much the economy is going to be hurt by essentially this brinkmanship over that debt ceiling still remains to be seen. But there is some measure, at least, of historical precedence on this. Remember that there was a debt ceiling kind of standoff just a decade ago in 2011. And you have to look no further than the U.S. Treasury in their own research and studies on the matter to say that, frankly, yes, there are negative macroeconomic effects from this sort of political brinkmanship over the debt ceiling. It causes uncertainty in the economy. We see volatility in the stock market, and there are some stresses that are placed on the U.S. economy as a result. Now, how badly the U.S. economy will be impacted this time around in 2021, I think still remains to be seen. Yeah. However, the bigger problem is if we do hit that debt ceiling, that's when you're really going to see some serious damage to the economy.
Well, investors have been looking for signs of clarity, or at least just paint a picture for us lawmakers as to what exactly could happen before the end of the year, entering into Q1 of 2022. Do you think that they received any signs that point to some sort of future yesterday?
I don't know if we got a totally clear picture yesterday. I think that the phrase kicking the can down the road is exactly right, because we frankly could be in the same situation in just a couple of months in December when Democrats and Republicans have to get together yet again to figure out what they are going to do about the debt ceiling. Or perhaps if we get rid of the debt ceiling altogether, which is something that, I mentioned to you yesterday when we were chatting about this. I think, however, markets, the economy, investors, the American people, at least right now, can take a sigh of relief. But it is clear that neither Democrats nor Republicans really want to default on the U.S. debt.
Right.
And it's something that has never happened before. And there is a reason for that, Adrienne.
Yes, absolutely. Usually we see this finalized, remedied at the last final hour, but the market is coming off its worst month since the start of the pandemic. The first few days of October haven't been exactly amazing. How much do you think the debate on Capitol Hill will continue to play a role, especially during such an uncertain time, considering the pandemic's effects and supply chain issues, which we've been talking a lot about?
Yeah, there's been a lot of pressure on the markets right now. Honestly, what's happening on the Hill notwithstanding, you have concerns over inflation running rampant, some of those supply chain issues that you have been mentioning weighing on businesses. There is still, of course, even that threat of the pandemic, the Delta variant, still somewhat hanging over businesses and the economy right now. And then what's happening on the Hill, typically markets tend to look past at least headlines in reference to politics. They tend to ignore it. And actually, they tend to do fairly well in face of some sort of uncertainty, political uncertainty. However, this debt ceiling conversation is something a little bit different altogether, because everyone has said pretty much unanimously that if we hit that debt ceiling, if we do not do something about it, if it's not lifted, if we do default on our debt, that there would be essentially a financial calamity. We would see trillions of dollars of wealth wiped out. We would see millions of jobs lost. The markets have not liked that news at all so far. They will not like it if we default on those debts in December, when that new deadline essentially is reached. So no, what's happening on the Hill, what's happening in terms of politics, the government shutdown, infrastructure, spending bills, these absolutely are all weighing on markets right now because they will have economic impacts and even impacts on some of the businesses that we are seeing being traded every single day.
Kristen Myers, editor-in-chief of The Balance. Thanks again for being with us.